What's up, good people? You got Lavelle here, aka Vell, and welcome to my channel where we bond over our favorite TV shows, trending topics, and everything in between that we care about. So today we are recapping another episode of Welcome to Sweetie Pies, Season 1, Episode 7, which was titled Second Chances. Second chances for who? I don't know yet. Let's find out. We start this episode with Miss Robbie. She's at the restaurant getting the staff in shape as usual. She turns around to Pop and says, "What you looking at?" She then tells somebody, "I could feel him looking at me." She then says to Pop, "You always looking at me. I'm old enough to be your mother." Now, I don't believe that unless he's had a really challenging life, because I always assumed that Pops was Miss Robbie's age or older. And then Pop says to her, "I like looking at you. You're pretty." Miss Robbie then replies, "Oh, well, you can look then." So funny. I always actually thought that Pops could possibly be sweet on Miss Robbie, and I always wondered, like, why haven't they connected like in a more romantic sense? However, after my recap a couple episodes ago, I now see that he has a horrible track record with multiple ex-wives, and also whatever else Miss Robbie may have seen way back then that made him not even an option in her sight. So Pops in her mind might have been a good employee, but a sorry man, especially for dating. Now, as Charles is arriving to work after his 1-week suspension, Miss Robbie says that Charles is her favorite nephew. Now, I really wonder how many nephews she actually has, because if that's her favorite. But I quote, she said, "But he's a lazy ass." And I think at this point in the series, we all are very clear on that. She then says that this time around, she's hoping that he would do better. Tim then arrives to work and walks past Charles as if he didn't even exist. And I think at this point, he was still upset from the catering event that Charles ditched him at, which, you know, he definitely needed the help. Once Tim decides that he's going to acknowledge Charles, he walks up to him and says, "Why do you have jeans and a t-shirt on when that's not the uniform for the servers?" Charles then replies, "Are you trying to make this a bad day?" So I'm like, you're not wearing the uniform. He's like the manager. He should be able to say that to you. But obviously Charles thinks that he's above the rules and the law in the Sweetie Pies realm. Charles then realizes that one of the servers, D, is making around $300 in tips every weekend. And so he asked D to give him some coaching so that he can increase his tips. Although Charles admitted himself that he does not like taking advice from anyone. And that was clear during his coaching session with D when he was rushing D to get to the meat and potatoes of how you get those tips. He didn't want all the fillers. He's just like, how do you get more tips? And come to find out that D's magic formula for getting more tips was actually just to give good customer service. Imagine that. Charles then has a heart-to-heart with Miss Robbie. He's trying to get Miss Robbie to hire his friend Jasmine back, who was let go a couple episodes ago when I did the recap because she was showing up late and wanted to leave early and having issues with other staff that she was letting affect her work. Now, what I found was humorous was Charles just came off a 1-week suspension. He doesn't have his ish together yet. And now he's trying to get his friend, who also don't have her ish together, hired back on the job. Now, Miss Robbie, being who Miss Robbie is, because she definitely has a soft spot in her heart for Charles, she then accepts to allow Jasmine to come back and says that they are both basically on probation. So Jasmine shows up to her first day of work and she's late. She's late for her first day of work of trying to get her job back. And I guess, like they say, birds of a feather flock together. And Charles and Jasmine are proof of that. Plus, I think Jasmine really had something bigger up her sleeve in trying to get rehired back at Sweetie Pies. Because within her first couple days back, she was asking Miss Robbie for private voice lessons because she had auditioned for American Idol when they were in St. Louis and she was not successful in the competition. So she figured that Miss Robbie could help her tweak her performance so that she could do whatever she needed to do to be a successful singer. Miss Robbie was happy to give her some advice, and Miss Robbie actually had some really great advice during the lessons as well. But she was a professional background singer for nearly 50 years, so I don't know why I was really kind of surprised that when I'm hearing her tips, I'm like, wow, that's actually a good idea. That's a good idea too. I guess I had just started to put her in the Sweetie Pies box when she's actually also a singing legend. My bad, Miss Robbie. Now, once Charles had finished with his coaching lesson with D on learning how to get more tips, Charles ended up getting more tips than D. D then said that teaching Charles his method actually backfired on him and he ended up earning less tips than he normally would earn. And Charles wasn't done. So the next day, he actually reported early to work, shocking the entire staff. People were like, "Are you okay?" Taking to try to touch his forehead like, "Are you sick? What's going on?" So Charles was turning over a new leaf, obviously. Miss Robbie even said when she arrived, Charles is on time for once. She was so proud of him that she asked for a kiss. So then we get to Tim. Now, Janae had been on Tim about putting TJ's nursery together and the furniture that needed to be assembled. Janae had her father come in town specifically to help with the nursery, and thankfully he ended up coming because he was able to force Tim into actually helping to put together the nursery. So as they were putting together the various nursery furniture, they began to bond a bit. Janae's father, who was a retired prison guard captain, stating to Tim that he had never dreamed of his daughter being engaged to someone who had done time, but he stated that he trusted that she had good sense to pick someone with character. Wrong. Now we clearly know she was wrong. He also went on to say that Janae is a good judge of character. I think we can safely say she was wrong again. He says that the bottom line is that he stays out of it. And I wonder, was that his way of letting Tim know, I know you're no good? And then also, as a former prison captain, we know that he was also very hip to the prison culture. So I'm sure that Tim wasn't really able to hide from him and his ways the way that he could, or manipulate even the way that he could other people around him. And we basically found out in time that Tim was just really a free inmate and not a reformed person that had done time. And that's why he eventually ended up back in prison. When it came to painting of the nursery, Tim was saying he can't even draw a straight line. So we know that he's not an artistic person. And all I could think is, I guess drawing won't be one of the activities he'll be doing in prison to pass the time. Now, while bonding with his future never-in-law, his never-in-law tells him that he is there for Tim as well, and he's there to provide him with support and advice if needed. In his confessional, Tim then says that he didn't have a father figure growing up, and he appreciated being able to look up to Janae's dad as a father figure now. Tim then asked Janae's father if he was aware that Janae had been asking Tim to go get counseling because of the fact that he still had not held TJ yet. Tim then says that TJ is still too small and he will hold him in his own time because, and I quote, TJ has cords and stuff connected to him. Janae's father then flat out told Tim that you just need to hold your baby because it will make you feel better. Now, I'm familiar with postpartum depression in women after giving birth, but it started to make me wonder, was Tim having some kind of male version of that? And it got me to wondering, can dads have that too? So the nerd in me actually looked it up. And according to the American Academy of Pediatrics, depression in dads is in fact a relatively common phenomenon affecting anywhere between 2% and 25% of them during their partner's pregnancy or in the first year postpartum. This rate can also increase 50% when the mother also has prenatal postpartum depression, and it can take a serious toll on the family's well-being, specifically their children's. Now, I'm not taking anything away from what we know about Tim's narcissism and his other issues. However, two things can be true at the same time. Nevertheless, it's obvious to many of us that the premature birth of TJ definitely added to the stress of their already strained relationship prior to his birth. Now, later on, Tim surprises Janae with the unveiling of the completed nursery. It wasn't anything spectacular in my eyes, no decor or anything. It was just like the stuff was in the room. But Janae was over the hill because he actually came through. And I guess when it's all said and done, it's the little things that count. Not extra effort, but just the bare minimum. So then we end up back at the restaurant where Tim has invited the local Boys and Girls Club youth to Sweetie Pie's for a motivational talk. He shared about his 10.5 years in the prison system. Tim then shared that he likes to speak to youth groups from time to time to share his story. He said that it actually kept him from going back to that way of life. He said, and I quote, "Although it's your past, you want to keep your past in the forefront of your mind so you won't go back to it." So for me, that statement was very telling. So it's like he still felt an urge to go back to that way of life, even with all the successes of the restaurant and all that was happening in his career and being on television and everything. And even with all of that, it still obviously wasn't enough to prevent that feeling or that urge he felt of being pulled back to the street or a life of crime. And I guess at some point that feeling and that urge for that criminal life just took over. And that's how he got where he is today. Tim then shared with the youth that when he was 15 years old, he was sent to prison. He said that as soon as he arrived, they told him that his name was no longer Tim. And from then on, he would be known as inmate number 560300. And in Miss Robbie's confession, she said that she was extremely worried about Tim when he was in prison because he grew up very sheltered and he was not a street kid. But now I wonder, how accurate was that? Was that just her perspective? Or was that the truth at one point? And I say that because Tim seems to have a lot of street connections for someone who went from being sheltered directly to being in prison, and then right after prison going into a chaotic restaurant business. He had some time for the street here and there. So that makes me question if he was living two lives even back then as a teenager and Miss Robbie just didn't see it. Because we obviously know that even at this point, you know, from 2016 on, from 2014 on, we can say that he definitely was living a double life. That life in which he was perpetrating a crime against his very own nephew for years, but yet living a life as a businessman and a son who was taking care of his mom and helping her with her dream. Meanwhile, at the same time, orchestrating a murder for hire plot. Like, that's two different lives. So I think that's very telling too, that I think Miss Robbie's perspective on who Tim was versus who he actually is or what he was actually about might be conflicting. In his speech, Tim said that he fell victim to the statistics that Black youth don't have a promising future, and that led him into making a lot of his bad decisions. I wonder what his excuse was as an adult with a promising future though. Tim and Charles ended up bonding after the speech, during which Tim shared with the youth that he really fusses at Charles all day because he cares about him and doesn't want Charles to end up in prison like he did. And I don't think any of us really saw that for Charles. He doesn't seem like a street dude in that way. Charles was definitely all over the place, but he's more of a like hang out with his group and party kind of thing. I didn't see Charles as one of those street dudes. He, to me, was the epitome of what Miss Robbie was describing as a sheltered child. Nevertheless, I think that talk and all of the conversation about male youth and their future caused Tim to think about his very own son, TJ. And so he went to the hospital to visit TJ, and he was actually happy that when he got there, Janae happened to not be there and she was out getting food. So he stated that he was actually able to have time alone with TJ, which he claims was what he wanted all along. So he decided that this was going to be his moment to hold TJ. Now, what was very telling to me was the words that he said to TJ as he held him for the very first time. While holding TJ and talking to him, Tim said, "We're going to do our own thing and not listen to Janae or Mama always trying to tell us what to do. If they say go left, we go right. If they say go up, we go down." And for me, that was very telling of Tim trying to purposefully create some of that conflict that we see him have. And another example of that was that he wasn't planning on sharing with Janae that he actually held TJ for the first time while she wasn't around. He instead took a selfie with TJ and wasn't planning on sharing information with Janae until she brought up him holding TJ again and maybe talking about counseling. And then his plan was to throw it in her face to prove her wrong that he wasn't afraid to hold TJ. Why that would be necessary, I don't know. Because you weren't holding him for weeks. And for me, this is a prime example of the prison mind games that his current girlfriend said that he was playing with her as well in later seasons of the show. Now, prior to him actually holding TJ in Janae's absence, Janae had called Tim about putting the nursery together, and she happened to say, "Hey, I got news. TJ had just weighed in at like 2.8 pounds the night before." And she says, "You know what that means?" Tim then responds, "Yes, that means he's almost 3 pounds. Janae then reminds Tim of what he had said, that once TJ reaches 3 pounds, he would hold him every day. Tim then immediately responds with, "No, I didn't say that." Janae then replies, "Yes, you did," and starts to run off a list of people who heard him say that, including a couple of her friends, a nurse, and Miss Robbie. Tim then replies, "I don't remember saying that, and even if I did, he's still too small." As a father, now this is personal for me, because as a father, you cannot think it's okay not to hold your child over a month after he was born. Jesus, take the wheel. Janae then calls him out and says, "Something's wrong and you must be scared." Miss Robbie then comes to the hospital and actually becomes the first person outside of Janae to hold TJ. Janae shared at that point that everyone was too afraid to hold him because of how small he was. Miss Robbie then shared that he was still too small for her too until he reached 3 pounds. She said although she knows how to hold babies, with being the oldest of 9 siblings, she had never held a baby that small before. And at that time, TJ had just reached 3 pounds 2 ounces. In Janae's confessional, she then shared that Miss Robbie was like a mom for her, and she really looked up to Miss Robbie. And that's sad with the current state of things, because I know over the summer, around, what was it, June or July, they actually fell out around TJ's birthday with the whole thing of Janae refusing to come out and bring TJ to them and wanted them to instead drop his birthday gifts off. And now we kind of know that the true source of their fallout was trifling Tim and Janae possibly knowing about the investigation. Again, we don't know how much she actually knew and if the feds were questioning her or even giving her a heads up to just be careful with the fact of, you know, them having TJ and knowing that Tim would have TJ, and maybe they didn't want any kind of hostage or kidnapping situation to arise from that, especially with this level of case. So there may have been justification for Janae switching up on them, and especially Miss Robbie, who said normally she had no problem with TJ coming and staying over and all of that. So I'm hoping that they've reconciled already, or hopefully at least something that's on the table for them in the future. So with that, that brings this recap episode to a close. If you're new to this channel or returning and you have not subscribed as of yet, this will be a great time to subscribe below and click that notification bell. And also don't forget, we have a text community which you can join to communicate with me directly and also get alerts of when we post new videos. So what is our word for this video? I think the title of this episode is perfect. Second chances. Yes, second chances, because everyone deserves a second chance. Not a third, a fourth, or a fifth like, you know, Tim. Tim is on his, what, third chance? Well, even beyond that, but not that many, but at least a second chance. Everyone deserves that. No one is perfect. We all are a work in progress. So don't be too hard on yourselves. So with that, till next time, until I upload the next video, take care and be blessed. Peace.